competitive, making plays, being good in situational football. Not for the coach talk, but it's just the reality of the situation.
This is Dillon Gabriel, quarterback out of Oregon. Dillon began his football journey at Mililani High School out of Hawaii and was one of the best quarterbacks in the state. In Dillon's senior season, he threw for 3,754 yards and 38 touchdowns and was named the 2018 Hawaii Gatorade Player of the Year and led his team to a Division I state championship. After being a 3-star prospect coming out of high school, he received offers from 7 different schools such as Georgia, Army, UCF, and Hawaii. Originally, Dillon would commit to Army before decommitting, citing wanting to play for a different team with a different style, and would commit to the University of Central Florida. Dillon would come into UCF as a starter on day 1 and played lights out, passing for 3,653 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions on a 59% completion percentage. He would follow that up with another decent season, but would unfortunately break his collarbone in his 3rd season. This would end his season, and Dillon would make the choice to redshirt to save a year of eligibility. At the end of the season, Dillon would enter the transfer portal, citing a desire to play against better competition. After originally transferring to UCLA, Dillon would flip his commitment to the University of Oklahoma. If there were any questions on if Dillon could compete at the higher level, he answered that question very quickly. He'd have 2 very good years at OSU, throwing for 3,660 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions on a 69% completion percentage in his 2nd year at OSU. Despite Dillon's great play for the Sooners, scouts didn't favor him as a prospect, citing his poor arm strength and stature. This would prompt Dillon to return to college for a 6th season, foregoing the NFL draft, utilizing an extra year of eligibility due to COVID-19. But instead of returning to Oklahoma, Dillon would enter the transfer portal once again, committing to the University of Oregon. Dillon would continue his fantastic play, basically matching his stats from Oklahoma, and would lead Oregon to the 1 seed in the college football playoffs. Unfortunately, Ohio State would shock Oregon, going up 34-0 at one point. Dillon would have a decent game, mostly in garbage time, passing for 299 yards and 2 touchdowns, and would declare for the 2025 NFL Draft. Dillon is everything you'd want in a calm pocket quarterback. Unlike many other quarterbacks that would bail out as soon as they start to feel pressure, Dillon will stand and keep his eyes downfield to get the ball out, while also being aware enough to sense when the pressure becomes too much. When the pocket does break down, he does have the mobility to escape and pick up yardage with his legs. Dillon's IQ is also what you'd expect from a quarterback with as much experience as he has, able to diagnose and exploit defensive coverages. He has great recognition with his pre-snap reads and able to diagnose blitz packages and change blocking assignments when needed. And his post-snap progression is also great, never hesitating to move to his 2nd and 3rd reads if the first isn't there. Dillon is also very reliable with his accuracy, being able to throw pinpoint passes to his receivers, making sure they can maximize their yards after the catch. Dillon has all the strengths and experience of a 6-year starter in college that many NFL teams could find very enticing, especially in the later rounds. While it isn't the worst you could ask for, Dillon's arm isn't something to fawn over, being described by scouts as, quote, average on a good day, below average on a bad day. This makes him less likely to throw deep balls and out routes, just not having the necessary arm strength to make it reliable. When Dillon is pressured, his accuracy tends to break down and his velocity gets much worse, making him likely unreliable behind a poor offensive line or against a good pass rush. In other words, if the system around him breaks down, he's more likely to make mistakes. And while Dillon can maneuver and escape the pocket, his mobility isn't exactly top tier, and would most likely be a run and slide quarterback after a few yards, not likely to make defenders miss. Dillon has also shown hesitancy to make throws in the middle of the field, constantly taking the much safer pass below and not testing the defense downfield. This usually wouldn't be a bad thing, but unfortunately, he does it quite a lot, allowing defensive coordinators to game plan around this and limit his production. His physical traits and measurables are also seen as below average, running a 4.8 in the 40 and only being 6 foot 200 pounds. Pairing all this with Dillon already being 24 years old, a lot of NFL teams may decide against drafting him. Dillon has been a reliable quarterback his entire time in college, but his many issues with his game keep him as a relatively forgotten prospect in this year's draft class. For Dillon to succeed, he'll need to go somewhere with a well-established system. He is not the kind of quarterback you just throw into a bad situation and hope it works out. However, his experience and polished traits could lead him to being a solid addition for an NFL team as a solid backup or a potential down-the-road starter. For that, I have a 5th-round selection on. With how many quarterbacks there are in this year's draft, all being day one backups for the most part, Dillon will really need to polish his game, and I do think he can become more than just a backup one day.